Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is back in the new year, a very deserved extended vacation for him. And honestly, a very interesting time. You would think that there's not a lot of news in this last week of the end of 2020, which everybody, I can't imagine the parties that are going to take place Thursday of this week. And I know that they're not supposed to. I know everyone's saying that you shouldn't get together. You still shouldn't do any of that stuff. Even though Christmas, people got together, and there's warnings. I have Dr. Fauci audio. I have all kinds of stuff to get to today, but people are going to party. I just want to start there by letting us all accept and really maybe take to heart the message that people are going to celebrate the end of this year together. Whether or not they should is not what I'm saying. I'm not telling you what to do, which is probably the point. A lot of places in this country, a lot of people feel that we're not supposed to be told how to use our freedoms. But in this case, no matter what you say, people will party. I have a lot of stories about that, too, to get to because it's a different day. But we have to start with the stimulus package, the fact that the president did end up signing this package. You know what I find most interesting? It's not necessarily that the president of the United States decided to delay his signing of this bill to give aid to the American people and a lot of other people. The amount of pork, as it's being described, the amount of additional spending inside this $900 billion relief bill, it's ridiculous. You know what we should do, actually? Here's how I want to say this. We need to create a rule that if a bill passes Congress, if a bill is even proposed anywhere, you have to identify where all the spending is. You can't name the bill whatever you want. The bill has to be named based on where the money's going. We can't just say this is a relief package and then there's also foreign aid for ridiculous things. And there's a lot of people who've weighed in on this. But I do want to start with the slamming of the current president by Democratic broadcasters more so than anybody else. But Democrats in general have been very upset, which I again want to remind everyone. The president for months, long before Congress finally decided to act on anything, had been asking for additional relief to Americans. He signed into existence a $300 a week bonus that he created via executive order. He's done a lot of things to try to give money to the American people. These are things, and I know that was for unemployed people, but still, he's done this already. He said this. Anyone that says this was an invention of right now hasn't been paying attention. And Democrats have been begging for money to go to the American people for a long time now. And Republicans have resisted the spending, probably because the way it actually looks when you get a package from Nancy Pelosi is ridiculous. It has so many things that are completely not tied to coronavirus. But let's start here. CNN doing its best job of telling you that the president's a terrible person for taking so long to sign a bill that, only provided $600 to the American people, and Trump wanted more.
By signing it after 7 p.m., the president averted a government shutdown, but his late action will punish millions of unemployed Americans by letting their benefits lapse. For days, President Trump resisted signing the bill, then spent the holiday weekend golfing in Florida.
Allison Camerata and many, many other people saying the same thing, and for days even, that the president of the United States was taking so much time dealing with signing this bill, taking so much time that was harming the American people, that unemployment benefits would lapse for Americans, which is true. Although the unemployment offices don't exactly respond immediately to something that gets signed in Washington. So my reaction to that part of the storyline is that it's a tad or a lot disingenuous, because there was a strong likelihood that people weren't going to wind up getting through this without a delay anyway, because governments are what they are in all of your local communities. They don't exactly act as quickly as you want. Morning Joe also had a take on this. And honestly, what's really interesting about this one is it's not even about the stimulus package anymore. Now it's just like full-on hating that President Trump is an influential person, at least still on the right.
Donald Trump's not going anywhere because he's a media critic, but enough. It's on us now. I mean, he's a lame duck. It's over. He lost. He's gone. Like, we have to kind of start to say, like, it's an hour and 20 minutes into the show, and Matt, is the first time you mentioned the name Joe Biden was mentioned.
I'll tell you why that is, by the way, real quick. The first time you mention Joe Biden on a show like Morning Joe, he's not interesting. He's not. tell me if you're a supporter of Biden, and I'm not trying to say that the supporters on either side are right and wrong here. I don't really care, to be honest. It's the end of 2020. I just don't care how politically minded you are. But if you listen to this show, I imagine you are. And so I ask you, if you're a supporter of Biden, do you really get excited about that guy? Does he captivate you? If there was an arena sale on tickets to go, and I know you can't go right now, but once things get back to normal, hopefully eventually, would you go? Would you see him talk? Is he captivating the way that, admittedly, and not that I like the guy, but President Barack Obama could captivate an audience, and Donald Trump can certainly captivate an audience? Biden can't. That's not what he's there for. He's there to be anti-Trump, and a lot of people who voted for Biden just voted against Trump. You've heard it time and again, so many places, and you know it's true. If you ask someone, say you're a supporter of the president, you ask someone who's a supporter of the opposing side what they liked about Joe Biden, they will tell you he's not Donald Trump. And then they'll start telling you all the horrible things that Trump has done, and they'll totally miss the boat on anything Biden may have a plan to do, like pack the court. These are things that don't come up when you chat. But here, let's get a little bit more Morning Joe.
Enough with Donald Trump already. He's done. He lost. And we, the media, have to be a bit disciplined and not continue to just cover this jerk.
I have to laugh. I have to laugh when I hear that. We, the media has loved Trump. I will guarantee you that. Not just a show like this show, any show that talks about politics. Every single media person, everyone who worked in that industry, whether or not they agreed or disagreed with Donald Trump, loved the fact that he was out there as a influential person, as the president of the United States, saying and doing the things he was saying and doing, because it captivated ratings went up across the board on anything that he participated in. And it's not just because people like him. There's a whole lot of people who hate this man, but can't resist hearing him. And so when the media says this morning, in reference to just all the other things that they feel will be the end of the president's influence when he is no longer in office, which is a thing. And actually, the New York Post, among other places, put out this article today. The front page of the New York Post is begging Donald Trump, the president of the United States, to give up on his push to still try to challenge the election. It's a whole article that I can dive into. We might actually try to get the author of it on. But it just basically says that the election is over, and this continued conversation about the legitimacy or illegitimacy of the election is harming America. And, I got to be honest about that real quick, and I'll get to more audio later, and we'll take a break in a second. But as far as the president of the United States and the things he's saying now, and whether or not that's actually harmful to our democracy, because that's what you hear, right? If you're someone who wants to take a high and mighty position on anything, if you're someone who wants to stand as high up on the soapbox as possible, what you're going to say is that this is harming democracy, that our country is being torn apart by the things the president is saying, the opinions he's had, and the way in which he's using his platform to put those opinions out there in the world. I think I've even seen a few different talking heads say they can't book like Trump people. They can't book Kayleigh McEnany on their shows because everybody just lies. And all I'll tell you in response to that is not necessarily that it's not, true, that there doesn't seem to be any validity to the claim that the election was fraudulent. There's still been no valuable proof presented. And I know that there are people that listen that immediately get mad that say, I've seen videos, I've seen this, I've seen that. The court system is not as biased, and certainly in some of the places that these court cases have been brought up, as maybe a lot of us think politicians are. The court system is less biased. It just is. They haven't seen the proof, and none of that proof has been truly shared with the American people to let us know that there's accuracy in saying that the election was fraudulent. But Hillary Clinton believed that her election was a scam, and she talked about it as recently as October. So this is the kind of thing that happens. I think if you're a politician, if you're a successful businessman, if you're a successful reality TV show host, there is a likelihood that you have certain beliefs in your mind about yourself, and it's hard for you to understand whether or not you could have actually legitimately lost something. And there might even be some truth. I want to say that too. Not that anything has been presented to us, but it's possible that there could be proof of more fraud that comes out at some point in the future, not to the benefit, I don't think, of the president anymore. But the idea that all of these conversations are harmful to our democracy are ridiculous. They just are. To me, they're patently false, and they're people that are just exaggerating for the sake of exaggeration. Because if you agree with the president, if you feel that this election was a scam, if you feel that it was stolen from him, You may do some things about that, but you're not tearing down the fabric of our society. And if you disagree, I can't imagine you're doing anything, because the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, will no longer be in office in a couple weeks. It will happen. It will all change. And so everything he says, it's sort of like, my best example is if you live with anyone in the family who says some things every so often, but never actually makes good on the things they're saying. That's what it's like for someone who disagrees with this current president and his feelings that there was fraud that manipulated the election. If you don't agree with him, you can listen to all the things they say and then just keep living your life. It's not affecting all of us the way that some talking heads want you to believe. And I just think it's ridiculous every time I hear it, or even that take, honestly, from Morning Joe, from Donnie Deutsch, and anybody else that says that this whole thing is, we just have to ignore the former president, Donald Trump, who's probably going to run again, FYI. If he's in good health in 4 years, the odds of the president attempting to get elected again, 100%. And if the Republicans don't want that to happen, guess what? This is the same problem they had in 2016. Trump will run independent. And honestly, this position that he's had as far as stimulus and adding $2,000 to every American's pocket and pulling pork out of the stimulus package itself, I feel like that's a very valuable campaign strategy and something that makes sense to a lot of people. We have more audio on that. We have a lot of other things to get to. It is a surprisingly active after Christmas week here on a Monday. I'll be back with you in a bit. The Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
Set Chad straight. Text the show, 323-538-2423. That's 323-538-CHAD. Someone has to do it. Might as well be you. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I'll be with you all week. I do want to touch on the attempted bombing. Well, I guess it was a successful bombing in Nashville. Luckily, not many people were injured outside of the bomber himself. I think a couple people were harmed as of the latest information that I have, but the only casualty as of right now is Anthony Warner, the person who perpetrated the attack. It was a horrifying scene, to say the very least. But there have been a couple reactions that I truly like in response to everything that's happened. First, and I will say this, I don't have the audio, but you should watch the press conference from police officers detailing their response, detailing the things they did. This is an attack that took place on Christmas. So it's just the kind of thing that's horrific in so many different ways. And then you have Senator Marsha Blackburn discussing the defund the police movement in response to what happened in Nashville and the way in which police did save lives, did protect people. There were all kinds of tourists and others wanting to get like photos of a bomb scene, which is ridiculous to me. It's ludicrous that you would want on a day like that to go see what just happened. And I guess the RV that exploded was blaring some sort of message saying that a bomb was about to go off before it detonated. Very, very confusing and odd as more information becomes apparent. But here, this is the reaction and part of the interview from the senator in Tennessee about the defund the police movement in response to what was great actual police work being done in one of the ways we so neglect, we so forget all the ways in which police officers are involved in keeping us safe in this country. It is not just necessarily to respond to some sort of conflict happening within a home. It's not just to respond. It's anything. The police officers that dedicate themselves to protecting a community do it in response to any potential danger, including things as scary as explosions and things like that. Here we go.
These 6 officers, Llewellyn, Hosey, Topping, Wells, Sippos, and Miller, did a phenomenal job. They saved lives, and they really humanized the police force. So I encourage everyone to watch it. I don't see how anyone could say defund the police after listening to this press conference. The emotion, the caring, the compassion, the way they worked together as a team to save people that lived in this area of the bombing.
It's not just the defund the police concept. It's things like taking tactical training away from police officers, trying not to have police officers trained for or with gear appropriate for responding to very serious situations. And I think that the only response I've ever had to anyone who's pushed for any of that stuff, even someone that says defund the police isn't what we mean. We mean like a nuanced approach with a lot of other spending and funding going to other things. It's so naive in the world in which we all live. It's so disconnected from the fact that there are mass shootings that take place, unfortunately, in our country. And I know this year, one of the odd, I wouldn't call it a benefit, but one of the odd ramifications of the fact that coronavirus has been so prevalent and such a scare in the whole country is that we've had less mass shootings and less things like that. But these are the things police officers are trained to respond to. A bomb goes off in an RV in a popular area of a city in our country. Police officers respond to that scene. Can you imagine even getting that phone call? In all seriousness, say you're a police officer trained well to do your job well, and on Christmas you get a phone call that a bomb has gone off and you need to respond to that. Can you even imagine that? And yet it's something that people that serve and protect our communities do every single day in one way or another as far as the things that they have to go be involved in. And so as we attack as a society in some ways, people doing jobs like this, we forget all the ways in which there's so much benefit provided by having a police force. And I think it's a tremendous point by the senator to say that and to point out the great work that was done in a chaotic scene and a person that just seems to be at least mentally ill, if not a lot of other terrible things. Anthony Warner is the one who's been identified. I guess he had some sort of manifesto talking about how he'd be a hero for an attack on 5G or something to that effect. And we'll get more information on that as well. Or maybe not. Maybe I don't want to give the guy any more of a platform. So maybe we don't discuss that anymore. Maybe that's just over for the day because thank God the injuries are not that substantial, and the loss of life so far as I understand, is just the person who perpetrated the attack. In other news, China has jailed one of their journalists that first broke the COVID-19 story. So there's a lot going on in the world of China, a lot going on in the world of COVID. So we'll have a lot more reactions to that kind of stuff as we go here. But how interesting to hear that they're jailing people that have broke that story. Yeah, they did a better job than us, right? Air quotes. Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I would love to start off this segment with some uplifting news. But Dr. Fauci was asked a question, and as Dr. Fauci is one to do, usually it's a sad version of an answer. I don't know if he just errs on the side of caution. I think there was a lot of conversations over the weekend, and he even addressed an issue about how he might play up some of the numbers in a way to benefit his conversation. Say there's a poll out there that says 70% of people need to take a vaccine or 60% in order for us to get to the herd immunity. And so Fauci will start saying that 80% of people need to get sick with it to match those same results. And he's defended himself saying that there's ranges. And I'm not even really explaining this very well. But essentially, he was kind of caught lying. He was caught saying that, he exaggerates to try to influence the people. And that's a very interesting position for Dr. Fauci to start being in. But here we go. This is an interview he did with 538, and he was talking about when we get back to normalcy, and this was his response.
All in all, when do you think we can expect to start seeing life get back to normal?
Well, it's going to depend on our success in vaccinating what I would say an overwhelming majority of the population, between 70 to 85%. If we can do that by mid to end of the summer, I think as we get into the fall, October, November, times like that, I think we will be very close to a degree of normality.
What's interesting about him saying October is I think he's just trying to avoid throwing out another first pitch. Because they might not do it for a World Series game. You might not have Fauci throw out a first pitch at a World Series. And if you saw the way that he threw the last time they gave him an opportunity at that, yeah, I think he'd probably like to see baseball not happen. But he says that we'll be back to normal by the fall if the vaccine is successful. And he actually threw that percentage out again, 70 to 80%. And there has been some debate as to whether or not the percentages he gives are really just to influence the American people more so than because they're the exact amounts he truly believes in. He wants the immunity to seem more achievable via the vaccine than it would be through herd immunity of people just getting the virus. And now that there's another, I guess, strand of it that's in the UK and it was in Nigeria, there's been increasing fears about that. There's a lot of conversations that are depressing. And so let's just move on. Let's move on, Collins. Let's talk about something else, something totally different, something more valuable. I know that there's going to be a vote, and there's probably going to be more discussions as we go here as to how to get more money to the American people, because the American people need more money. $600 is not enough, according to a lot of people. But part of the problem with that, and a representative, Ken Buck, points this out very well in an interview he did earlier today, the pork that exists in the current bailout, the current, whatever you want to call it, the stimulus package, is so ridiculous. The amount of spending that's not on anything at all to do with helping American people is the problem. It's not necessarily that there isn't support for $2,000 to each American for anyone that's fearful that Republicans are just being stingy. It's that spending on all kinds of other things and then also adding more money to any sort of bill because we need to give more money to the American people is where challenges start to arise. And this audio is a little funky. He was doing this interview from home, and he needs a better microphone. But I think that the conversation is very valuable. So take it away, Cal.
Nancy Pelosi gave the members of the House just a few hours to read 6,000 pages of legislation. She did that because she had stuffed this bill full of pork. We are funding, in a COVID relief bill, we are funding 2 new museums to women's history. We are funding social engineering programs in Pakistan. We are funding a panel to examine the succession of the Dalai Lama. All sorts of pork projects in this bill. What the president is saying is, make America first. Bring America, make America the priority.
I don't think anyone actually disagrees with that. I have to be honest. I know that Democrats want to see the $2,000 checks go out. I know that Democrats are the ones, Nancy Pelosi is the one that's trying to get the House to pass something that says more money, add more money, throw checks to every single American, enhance the amount of payment. And yet there does have to be a push and pull for a lot of us as to how exactly that's achievable when you do math. Because that's the other big problem for some politicians. I don't want to name any names, maybe young ones out of New York. They seem to struggle with math, or at least not care about it. Maybe they're very good at math. I shouldn't say that they're potentially bad at it, like AOC. Maybe they just don't care. Maybe that's fine. Whatever amount of money it is that it takes to do this agenda, well, the government can do it. The taxpayers will pay one way or another. And that truly is where we need to have an actual conversation as to how we get a bill that passes both the House and the Senate and gets signed by the president that's for stimulus, for relief. That's the way it's pitched to the entire public from jump. And yet the things in it are so ridiculously not tied to any sort of relief. They're so far and beyond it. Museum funding for programs that are going to happen in foreign countries. There's gender funding for other programs and studies and things that just make no sense. And they could have been something you address later on, or maybe never, and not right now, not when the people in the United States are struggling. And as Ken Buck says, you need to help them. Here, let's hear a little bit more. And I know the audio is funky.
So stop funding foreign projects in a COVID relief bill. Knock that out and take that money and use it to fund and give the American people a $2,000 check.
I don't know how you disagree with that. Honestly, I really believe that most Americans, if they're positioned to truly understand it, because that's the other part of this challenge, right, is that if I say that there's a lot of pork, there's a lot of spending that's not valuable inside a stimulus bill like this, and you're someone who just doesn't care, someone who just doesn't do math, which is the example I'm going with for some reason today, then you're not going to hear it. It falls on deaf ears, the complaint that we're funding things we shouldn't be funding in the year 2020. There's a lot of spending that we shouldn't be doing. And it's spending that makes people who want more and more money in the hands of the government for all different kinds of programs upset. And it would be a challenge. So if Republicans do try to pass their own legislation that adds $2,000 to the pocket of every single American dealing with coronavirus up to a certain income, whatever it is, similar to what we currently have now, and at the same time reduce a lot of the excessive spending that exists in the current bill, Democrats will vote it down. And Democrats are very excited at the possibility that Republicans vote down a bill for $2,000 to most Americans, so they can spin it to say all Republicans didn't want was to spend money on you, the American people. And that's not necessarily true. There is a different set of conversations that need to take place here. Case in point is this, too. I thought this was very interesting audio this morning about whether or not Nancy Pelosi even really wanted to see a stimulus package at all get passed before the election, results and the change in power, because it's such a weird other problem with all politics that everybody needs to have that this has to go up on our scoreboard. It can't just go up on a scoreboard for American people to benefit. We got to have it on Team Us. And so here, this is Lawrence Jones saying exactly that he believed that Pelosi, and he had heard that Pelosi had no interest in passing a legitimate bill, and that anything that comes post the transition of power is going to be hectic because there's going to be a lot more of a fight. There's not going to be bipartisan support for this sort of thing. You're going to have very political people getting into their side of the aisle on this stuff. And what's crazy is that a lot of the spending that was not part of stimulus has already been passed. It's already going to have been executed. So the debate then becomes, can we give more money to the American people? And of course, everybody who's struggling, any person who's seen their income impacted in any way whatsoever, unemployed or not, would like to see more money put in their pocket of their own spending, their own tax money. They'd like to see it go to them and not, say, some program in another country. But here's a little bit from Lawrence.
I think the president made the argument that more Americans need more money and that it was a joke to suggest that $600 was going to be enough. Sure enough, $2,000 is not enough, but it is a starting point. And I think that is something that both parties are responsible for. But many people, Republicans specifically, say this is Nancy Pelosi's fault. She did not want a bill to take place before the election, and now more Americans are suffering.
Yeah, I wonder if that's true. I wonder if a big reason for the delay, and I know that it's been thrown on Republicans are getting the blame for not wanting to throw any funding anyway, and I think that's true. I think that you got to be honest about that, too. McConnell was saying that he didn't know if it made sense. But part of the reason why, and maybe this is what we don't understand as people that aren't in the world of politics, is the way it actually looks when it's all said and done. Because the way this actually looks, the package that actually passed both sides, it has a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems within it that have nothing to do with the amount of money going to the unemployed or the amount of money going to the American people. And I don't know how we better address that than what the president attempted to do. And look, I'm not trying to be a homer for the president who says he always does the right thing. And I know a lot of people freaked out when he chose not to sign the stimulus bill for as long as he chose not to sign it. But if he really, truly was doing that to get more money to the American people and less spending other places, I don't know how you actually disagree with that. I don't know how. I don't know who in this country I'd talk to that'd be like, no, that money we're spending in that other country for that, program or that museum or whatever we're building, that makes more sense than giving it to us. I don't think any American would be on that side. All right, let's shift gears real quick, and then I got to take a break. I just love this story. And every time you talk about politics, every time you talk about the trash fire that is so many things going on in this year, you wonder if maybe you can go a little bit like this person did and just kind of, for 30 seconds, have the time of your life. This guy is out of Kentucky. His name is Timothy Browning. He's gone viral, and I'll put this video up on the Craig Collins Show on Facebook.com, but we can also try to get it on the Chad Benson Show and on Twitter and stuff, and you've probably seen it. But it's a 30-second clip of this guy. He's chugging a beer, and he sees some snow outside of his house in Kentucky. He's like, you know what? I got to take care of the snow. What am I going to do? I'm going to take a flamethrower to it. That's how he might feel about a lot of it. That's how a lot of us might feel about everything that is 2020. So the guy is clearing snow with a beer in his hand, flamethrowing his front yard. And honestly, it's a recreation of a Cousin Eddie thing. More of us should probably be doing this. More of us should probably be taking just an extreme approach to a very silly little problem, because why not? Why not flamethrow all the snow out of your house? I live in a snowy area. I don't know if you do too. And if not, just get some ice from the fridge, put it in the yard, and then flamethrow that. We do all have to access flamethrowers. That's a thing I don't have. I don't know if you do. But at least Timothy Browning has one, and he's awesome. The video is hilarious. Takes 30 seconds, and it works, by the way. If anyone was wondering about the efficacy of flamethrower to snow, it winds up working out just fine. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in.
Running with scissors sounds great compared to this.
Say what? This is the Chad Benson Show My name is Craig Collins filling in. Great off-air conversation with me and producer Phil, which you don't get any of. But someday if there's ever a podcast of this show, that's going to go in there. The behind-the-scenes podcast of the show, I guess. We do have a podcast. Check it out, The Chad Benson Show. I saw this article in New York Magazine and thought it was really interesting. 10 ways that 2020 has changed sports forever. These are a lot of beliefs, and the same is true of everyday life. There's been conversations about how businesses and even the way in which people will work from home much more than ever before will continue beyond the year that has been 2020 that I'm so happy ends in just a few short days, as I'm sure you are too. But some of the changes to sports may have lasting, longevity as well. There's the novel camera angles, and I was watching the game last night, the Sports Night in America, Sunday Night in America football game, and they have some novel angles. Also, Fox does a great job now with day games of the video game-esque angles that you see, and a lot of that is just because shooting the fans is fairly depressing. So there's no real fan shots anymore. So you have these nuanced angles of players, and that will probably keep going. Seasons could potentially get shorter. This is one that I agree with a lot. A lot of seasons, maybe not baseball per se, because people will be up in arms about the changes to baseball if we have a much different season, because so many of the records matter so much in that sport and have for a very long time. But a lot of other sports could see reductions in their seasons permanently. Plenty of rule experimentation has existed in all the major sports this year, not to the degree that I wanted. No one's going to remember this, but on this very program back at the beginning of the pandemic, when we had no sports at all, I implored many a way to change the rules to make more sense, including a sports dome where the greatest athletes of our generation play all the sports together like an Olympics, and then we determine all of the champions from just that. We don't need it from any one thing. To me, that would be the most interesting, the most entertaining thing to go about here, is that we don't just do, all these individual sports. We have a lot of play, but that didn't work. No one took my advice seriously. No one heard from me as far as that idea was, trying to get out there. But there has been rules and some implementation that's happened in other ways, some experimentation. Less power for collegiate athletes has been, unfortunately, a byproduct of this. I don't know if that will continue. There is going to be the beginning of athlete activism. This one hits a lot of people differently. The conversation certainly takes place as to whether or not athletes need to be political, need to be activists, if that's the reason that so many tune in to a sport. And the only response I'll say to that, I will never be the kind of person to hop on a microphone anywhere and tell a person what to do with their fame. I'm not going to tell you to talk or not talk about things. Go ahead. Discuss any topic you want, anything that you feel has value. Go ahead and go after it to whatever degree you want to. But if your sport suffers, if the viewership declines, if the fans of you as a pro athlete and a brand decline because of your activism, then I guess that talks to whether or not you feel you want to keep doing it. You are a business. Each athlete is varying degrees of successful within the business of them, just like any sort of celebrity on Instagram or anywhere else in the world. And so this activism that takes place and the way in which the leagues themselves embrace it or not will really dictate, I think, a lot of the success of those leagues, those sports, and probably as the business world changes around them as far as the value of their brand shifts, they might not be as activist friendly as they are right now. But we'll see as that goes. The backlash for activism is definitely going to get stronger, according to this article. There's lots of people that have said all kinds of things to that effect because maybe the tolerance was higher for a short time in a year like the year we've had. But as you keep turning on sports year after year and hearing from athletes the way you hear from politicians, we might start to get a little bit more, frustrated with that because many people, myself included, tune to sports as an escape. I don't go to sports to... And not that I'm not trying to demean the opinions of the people who play the sports that I love, but I want to see Aaron Judge hit a home run. I've never really truly wondered what his political stances are. Not that he's someone who's come out a lot to talk about them. No throwing him under the bus on purpose. I'm just a Yankee fan. A lingering economic recession is a big belief that might impact sports in the way in which even you're seeing in free agency things happen. You also have major labor discord that's going to continue to take place and probably create some problems as far as, the amount of people, the amount of money that's going to this. I hope I don't see any sort of shutdowns, though. I hope there's no additional things like that like we've seen in the past before I have to say this I didn't want to break this curtain, but I have to say it. My mom was texting me saying that she lost the show. She's listening live. It's like, I lost the show. What happened? Oh, I got it back. So threw me off, Mom. I'm doing a radio show. Can you leave me alone? I don't know what's going on with your computer, Ma, but I can't really fix it right now. I'm busy doing some other stuff. But she threw me off that entire segment. I'm talking about sports, Mom. She texts the show a lot. She texts me a lot. And now I've just let you in on that curtain. She's a very supportive person. But when she has a technical issue, she wants me to fix it no matter what I'm doing. A couple other quick things in the world of sports, at least as New York Magazine is concerned, that might stay changed. Less central power structures, more regionalized self-interest for some of the leagues. Certainly we saw that in football in the NCAA. And then a growing sense that the sport industry's industrial complex may not be worth all the trouble that they're getting into right now. The world of sports itself might start to get a little less value. It might start to be devalued in general as a lot of these things change. So I thought those were a lot of really important, really interesting kind of takes in the world of sports as I watched football all weekend, and I'm sure you did too, as I get excited for a lot of the playoffs going on. And to my mother, who's having technical issues with the show, I'll connect you with producer Phil, because I can't help right now. It's Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Happy early vacation to Chad. He will be back after the first of the year, after the new year. I saw this story and I got very excited, as I'm one to do anytime I hear about any trial that's successful of any kind of treatment for COVID-19. There's a new antibody treatment. This is being trialed in the UK that potentially could give you lasting and instant immunity to coronavirus if you were to get it. The difference between this and a vaccine is that if someone were treated with this antibody, a shot immediately after having symptoms of coronavirus, just like the president bounced back so quickly when he got coronavirus and said that for a very short amount of time, things were not going great for him, that this could give you lasting immunity, lasting protection for anyone that were to get it. It could give an emergency treatment option to hospitals throughout the world, similar to maybe some of the things that, as I said, have been trialed here in this country. But there's a lot of hope, a lot of potential benefit to this version of treatment. And it says something else to me, too, as I read through this story, that all the vaccine conversations we're having, all the ideas that is the ticket, the only ticket to this herd immunity, great, beautiful future that we're all trying to get to, in which we can go back to normal lives. There's so many people have said that it's not necessarily the only way that medicine could protect us, and stuff like this, new antibody treatments, new other ways to get you to the place of being okay. If you were to get this, are additional options, additional different, tools in the toolkit for those who become infected with COVID-19. Now, granted, this is just starting its trial. Right now, it's known as AZD7442. So I guess a new name will have to be chosen for that if it does work. But these trials by a company, AstraZeneca, are hoping to be very, very successful and give us yet another potential way to treat COVID-19 and treat coronavirus in people who currently get it, not just vaccinating those who haven't gotten it yet, or maybe people who even have gotten it but were never aware they got it. Also in other news of COVID-19 related, but not necessarily the bad kind, there's going to probably be a baby boom starting this month. Well, starting next month, starting in January. We're going to see a lot of potential COVID-19 quarantine babies, which will be very interesting to see if there's a huge spike in those, but that's a projection. Of course, we have a lot of projections that sometimes do or don't pan out, but this comes from some fertility specialists out of New York City. They say the boom is already here. They're seeing an uptick in births. I think that many people, this pandemic has sort of forced a reconciliation of what really matters, and that a lot of people are choosing to, if you've been quarantined for a while with a loved one and maybe you had started a family, maybe you hadn't, I can see how a byproduct of that. I saw other stories about how some other things had ticked up in sales, some things for those who maybe didn't have a significant other. And I don't want to touch on that too heavily, but But yeah, the idea that there could be babies, a lot more babies, that doesn't make a whole lot of, that doesn't shock me all that much is what I should say. I also saw that another mysterious monolith popped up in San Francisco. This one was made of gingerbread. It popped up on Christmas Day and it fell apart a day later. I kind of want the world to stop with the monolith thing. Not totally, like a little part of me is enjoying it. But I do think, and I said this early on when one of the first mysterious monoliths was discovered and then it disappeared, that it might just be the internet being dumb, that it might not be some crazy alien conspiracy thing that some wanted to believe it was, that these like metal monoliths popping up places were indicative that there was, something going on. And really it's just people being idiots. Instagram, social media, all of it has made us crave these viral moments so much that we manufacture so many of them. And although the gingerbread monolith is funny, I will give credit to people for Christmas Day celebrating it that way by putting one out that obviously was also edible. Makes sense, although I don't think any of it was consumed. I think that it just fell apart because, that's not going to stick together long term. But I do wonder, and I wonder if you're in the same boat. Tell us, text the show, tell Chad on Twitter. I love to send stuff to Chad on Twitter that he has no idea what it is. Whether or not you want the monolith trend to continue, and maybe what you think the next monolith should be made out of. We had gingerbread for Christmas. What do we have for New Year's? I just trash fires because 2020 is ending. You do that monolith form or something else. It's up to you. And then as we continue here, maybe there's a Valentine's Day one made out of like candy of some kind. I don't know. Maybe we just keep going, and that's how we entertain ourselves into 2021. If that's what we need to do. I also saw a different news story I thought was very interesting, totally shifting gears because I just can't do all the serious stuff today. I'll get back to it. I have more audio of Trump talking about, the stimulus package and people's reactions to it. And by the way, just I'll go ahead and ruin it. I'll go ahead and tell you what the reaction is. Democrats are mad at Trump and Republicans are okay with Trump, but also trying to navigate the situation when they disagree with him. That's all the audio ever is. It's Democrats being mad about something that Trump said or did, and Republicans either, supporting the president or trying to avoid the topic altogether. I saw in this, a study was done out of New York that demonstrated that it will be about 44 years on average for each individual person that they look at a digital device of any kind. The average person will spend 44 years of their life looking at digital devices, and that was even before COVID. This makes absolutely no sense. A poll of 2,000 Americans commissioned by Vision Direct, so maybe grain of salt here, looked at the average amount of time you spend looking at various devices. This isn't necessarily just your phone. It's your television. It's anything with a screen. And maybe this, you know what I do here? This is the way that I promote radio. You don't have to look at a screen when you listen to this guy. I know that you can listen to it on your computer and stuff. You can have a screen involved, but you don't have to. That's the beauty of radio. If you want to escape the craziness of technology and just listen to some guy saying stuff that you may or may not agree with, boom, right here. Success. You found it. The average American spends a whopping 17 hours and 9 minutes looking at a digital device each day. 17 hours. That's more hours than you should be awake. You should only be awake for 16 hours a day, asleep for 8. But people spend 17 hours and 9 minutes looking at digital devices. Over a year, that adds up to just over 6,259 hours of total screen time. Granted, again, this is only a survey of 2,000 Americans, so maybe we need a better census, a better group of people here, Vision Direct. When it's stretched over 60 years, an average lifespan, it takes 44 years of your life looking at a screen. We got to change that. I think if there's one other thing we can change, and probably quarantine and everything did not help us change it, but it's getting away from the digital devices to that extent, because that is a surreal amount. All right, let's shift gears one more time, and then I got to take a break. I saw this story about the strangest food combinations of 2020. A lot of people experimented in a lot of different ways, and one of the ways that people experimented, and certainly restaurants, was with food. Now, granted, this doesn't all take place here in the United States, although I guess if I start promoting some of these items and you love them a lot, we can start a viral campaign to get one of them here. In China, there was an Oreo shake from McDonald's that also included Spam the meat product. You would mix those two things together, Oreos and Spam, and you'd consume that, and you might even add some mayo into the concoction, and that just sounds like a meaty mess. That sounds horrendous, and I don't abide by that at all. And if you have a lot of leftovers for Christmas and you're thinking about doing like a shake version of it, which apparently they do in China at McDonald's, I say no, don't go that road. The King's Hand is a Regal product, I guess, that's been available in quite a few places. It's M&M's and cookie dough, and the disguise of it is they call it a salad, which I like this product. I mean, if I could go into a store and buy a salad and then the ingredients in said salad are almost entirely candy items, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. This is more my sort of thing in the world that is 2020. Burger King also had a chocolate Whopper that was available in some places throughout the world, not here in our country, but that also sounds savory and sweet and delicious, according to some. Hershey's chocolate syrup was involved. It had a chocolate-topped hamburger, so there was still meat. I don't get that. Somebody tell me on this, that listens to the show, if you like the sweet and the meat together. That's a phrase out of context I'm going to regret. But if you like that together, if you enjoy those products at the same time, a candy product and a burger, I can't get down with that. Taco Bell tried this jalapeno noir wine. This is a product that actually did, I think, even reach some shelves here in this country, although you had to buy it predominantly online. And I think Canada is the people to blame for this sort of thing. But for $25, you could get a Taco Bell-inspired wine that also had jalapeno flavor and taste to it. Tuna salad with Splenda in it was a concoction of Subway in places throughout the world. Heinz also had an ice cream product that had ketchup and also mayo as one of the ingredients in it. Again, this is very gross to me, not the kind of thing. And then finally, Pepsi. They experimented with their Coca-Cola by adding different kind of sweeteners and different valuable flavors to it to overindulge things like chocolate, things like marshmallows, to help make it a little bit sweeter, taste a little bit better. In 2021, some of those items may continue to debut on store shelves. And I guess we'll see the appetite for most Americans to this kind of crazy concoction stuff because, once you throw caution to the wind, once you embrace the craziness of the world, I can see myself getting a marshmallow Pepsi and maybe enjoying it. But I would never, ever, ever get a chocolate hamburger. But that's just me. You tell me if I'm wrong. This is the Chad Benson Show. Very silly segment. Craig Collins filling in.
Check out our Chad Benson Show Facebook page where you can hang out or hang your grievances out to dry. This is Chad Benson.
That is right. The Chad Benson Show is on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Find Chad any of the places. And this is the Craig Collins version of this show, though, right now. I am in for Chad today. So if you do have a complaint, don't hurl it Chad's way. He's on a much-needed vacation. You can find me on Facebook, the Craig Collins Show, as well. If you want to talk about anything. I was just discussing the monolith and all the craziness that has been 2020, and producer Phil jumps on during the break there and tells me about the Toledo Christmas weed, which is not this thing you smoke. It's actually just a weed growing out of the ground that has a cult following, and it may or may not have been removed because these reviews started a couple years ago. I guess it was a viral sensation even before coronavirus, and it continues to prove my point. The internet is a magical but also odd place, and some of the things that happen there probably aren't in our best interest. But I just love some of the reviews on the Toledo Christmas weed from this year. People who visited it just a few days ago, so hopefully that means it is still there. One of the people on the review site, I think I'm on Google, said that they love this landmark. They visit it every Christmas to praise the loving weed. It's way better than the Toledo Zoo lights, which my producer Phil also says is not accurate. Toledo Zoo is lovely too. But definitely recommended. Another person said, I heard about this at church the first time I've tried it out. Really loved the Toledo Christmas weed. So there you go. If we're worried about our society, if we're worried about all the ways in which we may struggle to bounce back, Americans in Toledo love the fact that there's a weed that's been growing out of the sidewalk for a while that's now been decorated with Christmas ornaments. And even the town, I think the mayor has embraced it. Everybody's on board. So that's all it takes. To give us some sense of normalcy, you just everybody bonds around a plant that's growing out of the sidewalk. That is a tremendous story. Thank you to producer Phil for throwing it my way. I saw this too, and I really liked this, and I don't know that you will. So, for fair warning, there is a Instagram reviewer or influencer, I should say. Her name is Carla. She's 38 years old. She's got some kids. She's got a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And this year, she went big on Christmas because of coronavirus, because of everything. But she is getting some slack on her platform, on her social media platform of choice, where she, as I said, has several followers and is a quote-unquote influencer. She spent $10,000 on her. She didn't buy anything for the kids. Now, granted, when I saw the headline to this story, which says influencer spends $10K on self and nothing on children for Christmas. I was like, bah humbug to you, ma'am, because your kids are probably very young. But when I found out that the youngest is just 13, so 13, 15, and 18, it did change a little bit, in my opinion. Should you have spent some of that $10,000 on your children and not yourself, Carla? Yes. Everybody's going to say yes to that answer. But I don't know if you've been listening to the show with me filling in recently. I mentioned that because of a couple different things, my wife being with some family members who unfortunately are having some health issues, some related, some not related to COVID-19. Her and I were separate. We don't have any kids. We don't have any pets. So I did spend Christmas by myself. I had a lot of people calling me, a lot of people FaceTiming with me and trying to give me a semblance of the holiday. And I did very much contemplate, too, just throwing it out there in the trust tree that we're on right now with the radio, traveling. But I decided not to. I just decided that it wasn't worth the argument when I got somewhere, wherever I was going, if someone thought that I shouldn't have traveled there. And so I will tell you that I spent a little on me this year, too. I didn't have nephews and nieces to buy for, or if I do buy for them, I could do it later. So I didn't throw $10K on myself like she did. But, if you're going to have to deal with the world the way it's been this year and you want to treat yourself a little bit, I think that's fine. I actually have talked about this. This is an odd transition. I'm just going to do it. Screw it. Who cares? We're all in this now. I've talked about this before on radio, not here, other places, that I have this weird thing. If I go through something tough, I get myself a gift. That's just the way that I've embraced dealing with things. I know it's peak millennial. I know that anyone who hears this and finds out that I'm in my 30s is going to be like, this dumb guy. But I do it. I had to get I told you this segment's going to get odd. I had to get a colonoscopy. There was a bit of a fear that I had, a serious health issue that I didn't have. But I had to go through that in my 30s. And anyone that's had one, they are a thing. There's a prep product. There's a whole, it takes a day out of your life that you don't get back where some things happen. And so I bought myself an Xbox after that experience. And every time anything happens, a little hiccup in the road, I'm in the radio industry, so every so often you could lose a job. Any of that happens, I like to get myself a little pick-me-up, just a little trinket. And depending on how difficult the situation is, the trinket becomes an Xbox. Because I will tell you that if you go through something like a colonoscopy, you deserve a gift. And I think that's what she did. This influencer was like, look, this year's been terrible. Even though for her industry, not really affected. You can keep going online and posting attractive photos of yourself and talking to your fans. That you can do no matter what you're doing, quarantine or not. But she threw some products her way. So I'd love for you to vote in. There is I have one of my favorite places on the internet is a Reddit page where you vote as to whether or not people are a jerk. It's a different word. They don't use the word jerk, but people go, they tell a story and they ask you, are they the jerk or is someone else in the story a jerk? And so I ask you guys to tell us on our social media pages, is this influencer completely out of her mind, Carla Bellucci, 38 years old, for being selfish and buying for herself and not her kids to the tune of $10,000 in Christmas gifts? And her kids, again, they're 13, 15, and 18. They're not, like 3, 5, and 6. So I don't know. She obviously is selfish. She obviously doesn't totally understand the giving aspect of the holiday. But if there were any year to forgive Ma, if I were one of her kids for going crazy and buying a lot for herself, 2020 is the year to forgive that. And also, I guess, if her entire, platform is social media and she's an influencer there, some of the things she bought herself, like veneers, Botox, and other things like that, I guess you could call those business expenses. Manicures, facial, new clothing, shoes, all those kind of things are just to up the ante to bring in more cash next year on the old Instagram page. So maybe you could go that road. Not saying I would, not my recommendation to Carla, but I do. I believe in the treat yourself option. As I've told you in a very open, very odd segment that I just allowed to happen here on a national radio program. But yes, I think that when things happen that are not great, you deserve a little pick-me-up. Maybe not 10K one, though. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in, and let me go to my folder of names that you haven't heard in a while and play you some audio from someone that's like, wait, that's still a person that's out there. Omarosa has been doing interviews. Omarosa wrote a book about the President of the United States, a bestseller. Because honestly, anybody can have a bestseller if you write something negative about the president. All the people that voted against him will probably buy the book. But here's Omarosa talking about some of the problems in the current White House that she sees, some of the issues with the deranged version of President Trump that she feels exists. And a lot of people apparently in the world of media feel exist. And yeah, I'm only playing this audio because, one, I totally forgot about Omarosa. And two, I don't know, you be the judge of what she's saying.
You know, I really feel bad for those who are left, because the reality is Donald's going to turn to anyone and blame everyone for his loss except for himself. And the only ones that are left now are Pence and Mark Meadows. And so certainly Vice President Pence is going to be on the receiving end of Donald Trump's wrath. And it's erratic, it's intense, and at many times it makes absolutely no sense.
The way it's described anytime anybody does an interview now is like you're 100% just going to get yelled at by a guy in the Oval Office, wherever I guess he chooses to yell at you. And you just take it. You just kind of stand there like a beaten puppy, and you just live that life. We're all adult human beings here, right? Like if you feel like the boss, even if it's the president of the United States, is being completely inappropriate with the way he's screaming at you, can't you duck out of the room? Can't a lot of people be like, you know what? No, I don't take that. And I know he's the president. I know he's got influence. But if it's really happening the way that people describe it happening, then yeah, you get fired over it. I imagine you duck out of that room at that time after you're getting a tirade from a guy that is unhinged, as so many people, and I think the book said that he was. I don't know. It's always so hard for me to believe that version of life still exists in so many places where you just get berated on a daily basis and you just accept it, you just take it, and then the minute you actually get fired is when you turn on the guy. You know, that's when you write the tell-all book. That's when you get angry, is not before. And actually, for a lot of these people, too, you never tell the public until the book's ready to sell. You don't actually turn to social media. We're so connected now. We have so many avenues to expose this sort of thing, to discuss this sort of thing, to put this sort of thing out there. And yet the only people who really are doing it are the ones who are hawking a product. Anybody selling a book is someone that I trust a little less. All right, let's shift gears. I saw this and I thought it was quite interesting. It's not necessarily connected to that story. But again, I have I really do. I have a very short tolerance right now for the news of the day. Because look, stimulus got signed. Anybody that's fighting on the stimulus back and forth, it got signed. Whether or not more money gets in American people's pockets and not in pockets in foreign countries is still to be determined. And hopefully it works out a certain way. But I saw this and I thought it was interesting. There is a debate in California right now as to whether or not tattoos are free speech and whether or not that makes someone capable of going around any sort of coronavirus restriction in order to get a tattoo. Artists in California are saying, yeah, this is free speech. Throw a tattoo on your body. It can be anything. You can get the heart on the back and like that. It's still fine. That's free speech, whatever it is. And they use some examples that are probably a little bit more valuable in this conversation. Someone who might have lost a loved one and wants to put a memorial to that loved one on themselves. But one of the owners, this guy's name is Mitchell. He's from Black Raven Tattoo. He says that for a lot of people, a tattoo is one of the only outlets they have to honor a human being, to speak their mind. And so for those reasons, these are the kind of things that should be around. I don't know that we can go this argument. You know, like restaurants are shut down, places are shut down depending on where you live. And obviously those businesses are suffering and they're begging for those kind of things to be reconsidered as we get closer and closer to hopefully having solutions to this problem that make it easier for so many of us to go back to normal everyday life. But to go like the free speech rabbit hole, that's more challenging depending on what you're doing. And I know that if it's the media, that it depends on what the conversation is as to whether or not they agree. If you're going to go out and protest, something like Black Lives Matter is going to happen in a community, the media for the most part gets behind you. If you were going to a Trump rally months ago and you cared about who was going to be the president of our country, the media was not behind you. They blamed President Trump and everyone else for any sort of gathering that was inappropriate. Now we have all these different places, hairstylists, any kind of salon, and I guess tattoo shops that are looking for other ways to skirt any of these boundaries. And you have places that are getting in trouble throughout the country. I actually have a story out of Jersey of a bar that was throwing a party inside a warehouse. This is a real story. And New Jersey, you know, I'm born there. I'm from Jersey. But sometimes the way they make the news, the way that we make the news is not the most beneficial way. Newark, New Jersey, 2 women were arrested and police busted up an illegal bar in a warehouse that was packed with 200 different people during the coronavirus pandemic. The two apprehended are Denise, who spells her name with a bunch of S's in there, and Catherine, They're sisters. They're 26 and 28, respectively. They're both from Newark. They were charged with maintaining an illegal liquor establishment, illegal possession of alcohol, and illegal sale of said alcohol inside a warehouse. These are the kind of things that are happening. You close everything down. You shut everything down. People find other ways to do it. In Jersey, we go drink in a warehouse. They were charging $5 for a beer. They had confiscated about $1,000 in cash and 82 small bags of cocaine that were on the premises as well. This all happened in earlier December, but yeah, this is one of the many, many stories that you'll hear. And you got a lot of restaurant owners, a lot of bar owners who are trying to go around these restrictions as well and give people what obviously they want, which is a place to go be, out and in the world. Some people are not as worried as others as far as the pandemic that does exist. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what people are doing. And in this case, I don't know. Would it have been better if more bars and restaurants were open so that Denise and Catherine couldn't have thrown up their own illegal establishment inside a warehouse? I would say yes. My opinion would be yeah. It would have been better for these 200 New Jerseyans to find an outlet to their desire to, GTL, their desire to go about this life the way that they want to and not be drinking and potentially doing some cocaine and maybe even gambling. There probably was some. To be honest, this place sounds kind of great. I don't know if this is the New Jersey in me now, but as you describe the environment, not that I would partake in any of the illegal things, although I guess it's all illegal if it's in a warehouse and no one has a license for it, but it does sound like kind of a fun establishment. Because if you are going to break the rules, by the way, in a year like this year, I imagine a lot of people just go full board. Like if you're talking to a buddy and you're like, hey, man, we should go out. And your friend's like, no, coronavirus, pandemic, that's a bad idea. But if finally they convince you to go, they're like, no, man, come on, we got to live our life. Let's go. And then they tell you that the party they're bringing you to is in a warehouse run by two girls and there might be a lot of illegal things in there. I think eventually your brain's like, well, I'm breaking the rules already. I'm already going out when I shouldn't. So this can't be so bad. You roll up to a really weird abandoned warehouse, at least from the outside. It looks very sketchy. And you keep telling yourself, nah, it'll be fine. It'll be good. At least we're doing something in this world that we're all living in. So, yeah, I imagine that if we had the regular establishments available to many of us, that whoever went to this party, at least half the people, although it is Jersey, all right, maybe just 25% of the people wouldn't have done that. In other news, and I saw this and it captivated me, so many things apparently do that have nothing to do with real news. There's cigar-shaped UFOs popping up all throughout California. There have been stories about more UFO sightings in places like New York. And I wonder, cigar-shaped to me is just such an interesting additional description of what they are. But I do wonder if maybe it's just because we're spending so much more time alone, or is this really happening? I mean, a lot of people are saying that the monolith or whatever else proves that aliens are a thing, man, and they're here. But then you see these stories, you see the cigar-shaped UFO and how many, many people are seeing it throughout California or the New York ones. And you wonder yourself, like, would this be the year, too, where the aliens finally decided to stop messing around and just pop up? Like if that happens, New Year's Eve, let's bring it full. Let's go full crazy here. Let's say that New Year's Eve, so in just a few days, aliens land finally. Because that's the thing. Like UFOs are only so much proof. And usually the people talking about it don't have really great photos. There might be some video. Everything's always a little sketchy. But all we need is just one guy to land or whatever they are. Pop out of the UFO and say hi to everybody or speak whatever language they actually speak. And then, boom, the whole world changes. And so if we took the entirety that is this year, 2020, and we ended it with an alien popping out just to party with us, I guess in a warehouse in Jersey, that might make things very, very interesting. That would definitely shift gears. We would pivot as a society on a dime. So I guess this is my weird segment. And if the aliens listen to the radio while hanging out in the UFOs in California, New York, I'm imploring one of you guys, as long as you're peaceful, to land and pop out for just a second. Hopefully you can breathe our air. Hopefully that all works out. This is the oddest segment I've ever done in radio now. I'm in a very strange mood this morning with so much in the news that it just is silly. But yeah, let's change the entirety of next year by having the first alien just pop in. And could you even envision that, by the way, real quick, to continue to go down this ridiculous rabbit hole? Donald Trump is still our president. What if that could happen before he was out of office? What if we could get our first press conference with Blurg and Donald Trump, President Trump, after they land on New Year's Eve, and the only message from aliens is like, yeah, let's go party. Let's go. Let's hit up the warehouse in Jersey. Like that, to me, man, life would have been so much better lived this year if it can end on that high note, which I'm now continuing to describe as a high note. And this is, just off the rails, so I definitely need to take a break. The producer's telling me in the air, get back to the news. All right, I'll get back to the news in a second. No, Phil's not doing that. I'm kidding. But this is, to me, my hope for the next few days, that we get the first landing of one of these UFOs and somebody hanging out with the President of the United States, who is still Donald Trump, for the next few weeks. Because the Biden thing, that would be the most boring press conference. Biden would make an alien boring. And that says a lot about the next president we're about to have. Somehow, that press conference would still be like, man, I don't know. I don't feel all that excited about it. But Trump with an alien? Oh, man. That's the only way you win the election, actually. I'd say that, too. I'm kidding. But I think that if the aliens were part of this whole society all of a sudden, that a lot more people be like, you know what? Fine. Let's just let Trump stay. All right. That has been the most ridiculous segment of the day. You're welcome. And for those that hated it, I promise to get back to the news of the day in just a second. The Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
This is The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. A big movie debuted over the weekend. Right on Christmas, actually. And you know, a lot of people had high hopes for the movie. It was Wonder Woman 1984. Rotten Tomatoes now gives it a 65% on the tomato meter, which is not necessarily high. It's a good movie because it's above 60%, but it's certainly not a great movie like so many other Marvel products are. DC Comics, which is where this comes from, for whatever reason, they're the Batman, the Supermans of the world, has had much bigger issues with putting movies out that are universally loved than Marvel, which is the Iron Man, Captain America, the Avengers, all those movies. I don't know what it is, because the characters are essentially the same. And actually, in this movie, which I did watch on Christmas Day, I wanted to see Wonder Woman 1984, but I'm a comic book nerd, which for a long time I had to deny. I had to pretend in every room I was in that I've never read a comic book, because nerds did that. And now it's like, cool. Now comic book nerds like myself, for some reason, are cool kids, which makes no sense to me. But this movie, it did seem like there was some things in it that were sort of purposefully in it to say something rather than just be a movie. And then also the thing I thought most odd about Wonder Woman 1984, I'm giving you my review, is that the director and a few of the other people involved in it, and I don't know if this is because it was shot, I assume almost entirely before, I think it was shot entirely before we had any issues. But a lot of the action scenes were not really action scenes like you're used to seeing in any sort of, not just a superhero movie, but any sort of big blockbuster action film. They were subdued in a way. And I guess the people who created this film wanted everything to feel real. They wanted it to feel, like it could actually happen in society. But what's the fun in that? If you're a superhero person and you are making your way through life, you should be doing ridiculous things. That's what, if I were gifted with superpowers, I would do insane things. I wouldn't hurt people. I'd probably be a good guy. I'd save people, but I'd just do tricks for the heck of it on the street, like put a hat out in New York and then jump 1,000,000 feet in the air. I don't know that that's an accurate statement. And then land. I mean, like that's what you want to see in a movie. So the fact that they brought those elements down, and obviously the first Wonder Woman movie was very much reviewed quite well. People liked it a lot. This movie, not so much panned. And I don't know if part of it is also just seeing it at home. I do wonder that. Like I do wonder if this is now an example of how the movies at home thing is going to change our expectations. Because I think I have a fairly nice setup at my house. I have some fancier speakers and a decent-sized television. And I watch the movie. I don't feel like I'm in a movie theater, though. I don't feel like I'm getting the full experience. My popcorn isn't as good. Granted, much cheaper, but not as good. So I wonder if maybe that's a part of it, too. So many people who reviewed this movie, so many people who reacted to it, did it from the comfort of their own home and not within a movie theater. So maybe that also took quite a bit away from it. But the reviews, I guess, as a consensus, according to Rotten Tomatoes, says that it struggles with an overloaded, oftentimes vibrant plot. The escapism is satisfying to fans of the franchise, and the classic central character is rewarding, but the movie does struggle. And maybe some of the plot doesn't totally make sense. Because it is weird. I don't want to ruin it for you, but the end of the movie, you might scratch your head like I did and be like, really? That's all it took? Like, we go through this whole movie and this whole thing is happening, and then at the end it's just this? Because that's part of it, too. I guess I'll spoil one little thing for you, and spoiler alert for anyone that's still going to go see it. The final win of the movie doesn't really involve like punching of any kind. It's not like, the good guy has to punch the bad guy enough times to win the movie, which is usually what happens in most superhero movies. The ending, the final win is done completely punch free. And maybe that's how my review of the movie. It's a punch free, time spent watching in the comfort of your own home. But maybe we'll see less and less blockbusters. And maybe people like producer Phil will watch more movies, because he was just telling me off the air that he's got some movie rules that he follows and he abides by quite closely. And if we get less tent poles, less number twos, all those different things. What are all those rules, Phil? What are all your movie going rules?
The first rule is, and there are exceptions to all of these rules. First rule is I don't see anything based on a comic book. I don't go to see any movie with a number at the end of it. And I don't go to see any movie that's a reboot or reimagining.
I love the rules. And maybe if the movie theater goes away, if you don't have the blockbuster anymore and we got to see all these things at home, maybe the more, intriguing. What's your favorite type of film to go see? I'm just curious now.
I don't know. I like a lot.
You like an artsy
films.
project. Oh, you like horror. Okay. I get that. That's very interesting. I like the idea of a horror movie as well, but also from the comfort of my own home, it might not kick as hard. But that's a very interesting rule, and one that maybe Hollywood will wind up abiding by more because, they can't. I don't know. Well, we'll see. The next big movie, because I think Soul, actually, from Pixar also debuted over the weekend, getting much better reviews as far as a movie goes, an animated film. But obviously that kind of movie isn't really reliant on the big, giant moments that the movie theater is so great at enhancing as far as our experience goes. So maybe we'll see more and more stories told via Hollywood that aren't necessarily like big. I would be so sad if the Fast and Furious movies weren't a thing anymore. And I know I'm not exactly in the majority when I say that, but those movies are great. They're lovely. I like all of them. I like the action of them. I like everything. I don't want to see that end. And I will go to Fast and Furious 25. I will not follow Phil's advice. I don't care what the number is at the end of that kind of movie. But Pixar, like I said, they debuted a movie as well, Soul. It's on Disney Plus here in the United States. I think it's on Netflix. A lot of other places in the country, in the world too, and in movie theaters, of course, in places that are doing that. And it got great reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, great reviews a lot of other places. And the pitch there is a very, very different movie-going experience. 97% on Rotten Tomatoes as far as a good film. So over the weekend, I'd love to know, and tell us on our social media pages if you watched a movie, if you went to a theater, if you're somewhere where you could. And I even saw people imploring anyone to like rent out the whole theater. I love that idea, but I'm not in that camp yet, guys. I think a lot of us are not. So good luck to you. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. The New York Post has a front page that's being talked about a lot, which I don't know the New York Post gets that all the time. Certainly, regionally, the New York Post gets discussed quite often, but this seems to be a national headline. Their shocking front page begging the president to give up on the insanity is causing shockwaves, and this is according to one reaction to it throughout the party right now, throughout a lot of politics. The editorial board wrote in their op-ed that you're cheering for an undemocratic coup as far as one of the things the president may still be doing in attempting to still remain our president. Although I don't know how much of that is truthful, because there's been a lot of ways in which the president has signaled that he understands he is no longer going to be in power. One of those would be the pardons that are also getting much talked about that he has issued. Those are things that presidents do, several pardons when you believe that you will no longer be the president of our country. But many people are thinking that this is signaling that the owner of the New York Post, Rupert Murdoch, is abandoning the president. A sample in the reaction that has gone viral on social media, on Twitter, this is part of the article, says that securing the Senate means securing your legacy. You should use your considerable charm and influence to support the Georgia candidates, mobilize your voters for them, Focus on their success, not your own grievance, as we head into the final week. If you insist on spending your final days, this is the New York Post, in office threatening to burn it all down, that will be how you are remembered, not as a revolutionary, but as the Antichrist holding the match. This is interesting, an anarchist, excuse me, not the Antichrist. I added a little bit of flair to what the Post wrote there. That would be intense. An anarchist. I need to read a little bit more slowly, holding the match. But what's really interesting about this entire discussion, and I do continue to believe that what the president says matters to a point. And I know that that's sacrilegious to say. I know that a lot of people say it's the president of the United States, anything he says, everyone. But come on. Time and again, throughout the 4 years that this guy has been in office, people have ridiculed a lot of the things he said. Even supporters have sometimes turned the other way after something that's been tweeted out or put out on social media and been like, all right, well, he's been a very effective president, so I don't really worry about that. And I know there are people that are taking to streets. There are protests that are rising up in support of the president and his claim that he was cheated out of the election. I do want to continue to remind people, as I discussed this, that Hillary Clinton said the exact same thing about the 2016 election and Russia back in October of this year. In October of this year, she was interviewed about her thoughts on the 2016 election, and she still thinks that there was some sort of manipulation that took place that significantly altered who won the 2016 election. And so for someone in the world of politics who probably thinks highly of themselves in order to run for president, let's just say that for a second, by the way. I don't think that anyone who's truly humble has ever run for president. I don't think you can. And I'm not trying to say that every single president was as over the top as some, but I honestly don't think you can see yourself with enough value to do something like that, to try to be the leader of our country without also thinking, pretty highly of yourself. And so when people who think highly of themselves, certainly very highly of themselves, like a reality TV celebrity, like a business human out of New York, and like a person who's the current president of the United States does, then when you lose, it's probably hard to fathom. And then some of the just basic things that are thrown out there as far as the turnout in this election, that it was greater than even Obama as far as support he got in 2008 when he's breaking a significant barrier in the world of politics and getting a lot of people mobilized to vote for him. It does become a little more challenging to think that Joe Biden somehow had more support than President Obama. But I would say, and my understanding has always been that it hasn't been that as much as just hatred for the president for those who voted against him. And the fact that you could do it on your couch, that everybody who voted in this election had the ability, because of a lot of states allowing it at a degree that some didn't in the past, to vote by mail, that you could get something in the mail and be like, oh, I can fill that out and send it back. I mean, it's like getting a magazine subscription, kind of, Have any of us ever made a horrible decision as far as a free magazine that was offered to you in the mail? Like, oh, okay, I'll do 1 year of ESPN, the magazine. That'll be fine. 7 years later, I'm still getting this. I'm still paying for this. That's how easy it was. And so is that fraud? No. Is that a change in the way that our elections took place? Yeah, it is. And I think that has been a significant impact on what seems to be a fair election. But the New York Post is begging the president to stop, to turn around in a very scathing review of his actions now. A lot of people are describing him as fully, insane and off, his rocker kind of stuff, and saying that Omarosa audio we played earlier, talking about how it's very difficult to deal with this man right now, even though she'd have no real ability to understand that because she's not actively around him anymore. And there's so much divide, so much politicking of all of this as we go down. But are the president's pleas for people to consider the election fraudulent worrisome to a lot of people? Yeah. But do I actually think that they will? I mean, come on. In the 4 years the man has been in office, if you disagree with him, there's been other things he said on social media that I've heard the take, like, this is the end. This is the one. This is going to send everybody too far. And yet we've continued to somehow make it. If you remember when the guy won, people were saying that we weren't going to be around in 4 years, that somehow the entire country would come to an end because the man was in office. So as this transpires, as this unfolds, the end part of this, as we're very, very close to the end of the first presidential term of the president and with transition of power, I say that, well, I care and I want everything to work the way it's supposed to work. I'm not sure that I have the fear that so many do as far as what the insanity actually means. But the New York Post is begging him to stop because the focus does need to be on Georgia, that that winning those seats in Georgia is more important to both political sides than anything else right now. There's a belief that the reason the stimulus package passed at all, that Republicans became very interested in stimulus and in passing something and giving checks to Americans, is because it was a bad look in Georgia, trying to convince voters to vote for their candidates, while also saying that they weren't necessarily on board with stimulus. That became too rough of a look, and that those two seats are so tremendously valuable to who controls the Senate and how that looks. If Joe Biden steps into office with a Senate he is in control of and a House he is in control of, granted, very small majority in the Senate, that is significantly different. Actually, essentially no majority, but that's significantly different than if it's the opposite. If Republicans hold control, at least of that part of the process, then it becomes a very, very different animal for all involved. And so if the president is actually harming the candidates in Georgia, this plea does make sense. I don't necessarily know that that's true, though. I don't necessarily know that that is accurate as far as the reaction, and if the belief in the fraudulent activities by the president do come from just procedural things that were done maybe inappropriately in a year that was challenging for all, I don't know that that's completely baseless as a claim. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to have enough value to have overturned the election. But I do think that some things done by our government might have been done in a sloppy way, and that might be part of the plea. But again, and this is to anyone out there that's talking about this on either side of the aisle in your own unique orbit that we all have, anybody that you communicate with, the complaint that there's been no real proof presented to the American public. Now, granted, if you're going through the legal system, that's not necessarily the best way to make your case legally, is to just provide all that information to the people. But there's not been any real convincing evidence that things were manipulated in several states. It's not just one. If you see a video of ballots popping up while a water main is potentially broken in one significant area, that doesn't necessarily mean that happened everywhere. And just so everyone understands, for this election to change, the president would need to win several states that right now he has lost. And so when you account for this fraud, this manipulation of our election, you have to say, in order to do it in a way that actually matters, that it happened to a degree that was substantial in several places, not one video in one place. That's not enough. And even the voting system that might have been flawed and might have turned votes, you need to prove that technology actually changed a lot more votes in a lot more areas. And for anyone listening to this show, and granted, I know that some people are going to get mad at this, it hasn't been proven. And I'm not saying that I don't want to see it. I'm not trying to tell you that this is because so many people, by the way, will use that as their confirmation bias. They will use that as see, proof I knew the whole time that this wasn't a rigged election. We didn't know the whole time. We do have to go down these rabbit holes or down these types of conversations to discover truths. We have to. You can't not. You have to. If something is challenged in a court system, you should see it out. And I wish that the Supreme Court had actually tried one of these things. I wish that we actually had the Law and Order version of some of the case being made for the American people differently than what we got. I know they threw out cases. I know stuff happened that involved the Supreme Court, but it wasn't enough. I feel like we should have had more. He's the president of the United States. He's saying something that's obviously, if true, incredibly significant. If not true, according to so many, damaging. Why not just hear the entirety of the argument? Why not have the Kraken released all over and really truly get a sense of what is actually being said? That for the American people, it's so much harder to do when it's getting thrown out in a state court somewhere. You actually have to see it tried on the biggest stage and understand it on the biggest stage. And sadly, we didn't get that. But the reason we didn't get that, according to the Supreme Court, is that the cases weren't valuable enough to even be seen. And so that is significant to some, maybe not to all. But so the New York Post, now one of the many places begging the president to stop, and a lot of places accusing the president of potentially harming our society. And I can't totally get my head around all of that. But I guess in 2020, there's, so many different things. I actually have a couple stories about China, and you know what? I'll do those real quickly. I should take a break, but I'll do this first. I saw that in China, they jailed a citizen who was also a journalist for her account of COVID-19. She's going to go to jail for 4 years as a citizen journalist because she documented the ravaging effects of the virus on cities. There's been a lot of proof coming forward that China, not that this is new, we've actually known about this pretty much since a month or so into the thing, that China was hiding a bunch of their details, a bunch of their data, underreporting cases, taking way too long to confirm coronavirus cases, doing all sorts of things while shutting down to a degree that no one thought would ever work in other societies, shutting down their country, quarantining, forcing individuals into all kinds of stuff, whether it's testing or anything else. And now there's actually a debate in our own country as to whether or not your employer can require you to get a vaccine. And if you don't get it, could you be fired for that? And that's an interesting conversation, an interesting debate to be had another day. But if we want to have solutions the way that some of the countries who, quote unquote, beat us as far as effectively, neutralizing the virus to a degree that our country didn't, then you might go down the rabbit hole of having situations where journalists go to jail. And I know that even the president wouldn't be so sad about some journalists going to jail, but this person just told their account, their story, their on the ground eyewitness details of what was going on, and they're going to prison for it. And also, I saw that the Chinese economy is now projected to overtake the U.S. economy by 2028, which does add some value to the conversation as to whether or not this entire thing somehow benefited China. And I'm not trying to tell you that I believe necessarily in any sort of conspiracy as to the intent or the purposefulness of COVID-19 or where it was created or how it even exists, any of that. But it is significant to say just these two little things, that in China they'll be jailing a journalist who was significant in discussing the pandemic and the realities in that country. And then the economy is doing quite well there and is likely to be the biggest in the world in a few years. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in after the break. I want to tell you about how much money billionaires are now worth because they've done well. And also a viral trend on TikTok that is pretty interesting because there's a lot of dumb boyfriends out there, all in just a bit.
Welcome to Chad. No, not the country. The institution. The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. It's always fun to play a prank on a loved one. I don't know if you all agree with that, but I stand by that. It's always fun. A harmless prank, an innocent prank, something that isn't going to injure anybody. And that is currently taking place on TikTok. There's a lot of people right now that are quite enjoying the latest viral trend. And I guess it involves a girlfriend asking a boyfriend to hit the store and buy them a hygiene product, a female hygiene product is the best way I can say it. And the way in which this is a troll job, I guess, or the way in which it's becoming quite hilarious to a lot of people on social media is either the name of these products, which some I can't say on the station, or just the description of the product they're being asked to go get. And then they inevitably, here's the thing. In a year like 2020, or just in general with the technology we have, not necessarily the pandemic version of our world, but just the technology version, if someone's taping you after asking you to go do something in public, this is a joke. There is no scenario where someone's going to pull out their cell phone and be like, hey, can you get me this thing? And then start taping you. That it's always a prank. I mean, the cameras aren't hidden anymore, I guess is what I'm saying. The hidden camera show that every single person can now pull off on a loved one. The big clue in your mind that this is not necessarily legitimate should probably be the minute they hit record on the old cell phone. But people are being asked to go get super jumbo size things with wings attached to them. And they're describing that in the stores and being like laughed at. Apparently in the stores, they're being asked for products that are named things like the squeaky clean. I can't say the rest of that. But this is, I think, innocent, funny, in my opinion. I guess it's one reason why TikTok has owned the world in 2020, according to some think pieces that I've seen as well. It's the social media platform of choice for young people. But if you can convince a loved one to walk into the store and ask for a embarrassing product that doesn't even exist, I think that this is a fairly amusing. This is me. I don't know if that's you, but that's me. And actually, I've seen other news that horrifies me. Maybe I'll get to later on in the show. But there's new super illnesses that are taking place out there. Some of them are of the STD world. Super gonorrhea is one that apparently is becoming very difficult to control because of the use of antibiotics. And honestly, I do this every so often. This is a story that could have waited till 2021. This is the kind of thing you didn't need to tell me a week to go into 2020. We could have held back on this, Forbes. You didn't have to publish this article now. One last thing I saw, the U.S. billionaire wealth this year increased by $931 billion. Billionaires in our country made an additional $931 compared to obviously a lot of Americans who struggled. This is obviously a takedown piece about how unfair and disproportionate wealth is in our country. And yet part of what I react to when I see this story is to realize that the entirety of our economy didn't necessarily tank the way that we all think it did. It just got very selective. And that's part of the reason why so many people want these small businesses to have every ability to survive that they possibly can. Amazon and Walmart and all the other giant places that made significant amounts of money didn't do it just because their product all of a sudden got even better. They did it because competition was eroded even further as so many people were forced to close their doors and just don't have the online pull of a Jeff Bezos or anyone else. And so the biggest reason to me that so many people are begging for us to reconsider what we do in this country to make sure we're protecting small businesses is because of this, is because if there is no competition, all the money goes into these hands even easier. We need things open so everybody can compete. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad will be back in the new year. Amazon has a brand new lobbyist that's going to be working quite hard in getting a lot of their things done in the Biden administration. This is a very interesting story to me. I don't know that we're hearing a lot about this, but the trillion-dollar tech company has hired lobbyist Jeff Reschetti. He is now, the group is getting a lot of work. The brothers will be very influential in the Biden administration because, well, his brother Steve is an incoming advisor to the president and someone that registered as a lobbyist for Amazon on November 13th. According to the disclosure on the forms filed by Congress, Reschetti will lobby for Amazon on issues related to COVID-19, which includes implementation of the CARES Act. Biden tapped his brother, the longtime aide, to serve as his counselor back in November. CNBC first reported the Amazon connection and that it had hired the lobbyist group, the Reschetti Inc. group, to be a powerhouse. And honestly, this is not even the first of the group that's doing it. This is the firm's 10th company they've taken on since Biden won election. So there's insiders already, all these things that, again, I think connected with a lot of voters when President Trump, who certainly has his flaws, I don't want anyone, whenever I mention the guy, to think that I'm excusing every single thing that people have an issue with, but he wanted to drain the swamp, and this feels very swampy as I read through you the details of that, and just the fact that that lobbyist group, that organization, is going to be tied to a lot more than just Amazon, but tied to quite a few different places. So it'll be very, very interesting to me to see moving forward how all that works. In other news, and I just loved this audio, so I'm going to play it for you real quickly. There were some talking heads. There were some interviews going on. I think this was at CNN, and none of that mattered. There was reaction to the stimulus and bipartisan support of it. Actually, two politicians are discussing how they're part of a team that's very much designed to get things done. And yet this interview gets interrupted in like the best of 2020 ways, the most universal kind of way when you're doing stuff like this from home. And you'll be able to detect it. Here it is.
They're going to be supporting the direct payments getting out the door for some time. So now it's just a matter of getting that done. But again, a huge sigh of relief for so many families who need help right now tonight. So many small businesses that are on the verge of going out of business.
That dog just keeps barking. That dog just keeps barking. The other person in the interview actually called it out later on, and I guess we got a name drop for the dog.
Well, first you got to recognize Rosie's excited. That's Josh's dog in the background. So we applaud Rosie's excitement too.
The thing that was exciting to me, though, watching this back, is how the attempt was made by everybody to ignore it as it was happening. It was only after the fact, after the barking had stopped and after the other person jumps on to do another part of that interview, that you even acknowledge it. And like, that's comedy. That's anything 101. When something like this interrupts you, you got to acknowledge it. The interviewer tried to ignore it. Everybody tried to ignore this. This clip has gone viral. Rosie the dog, very excited about the stimulus package, and just kept yapping, just kept barking in the background. I don't even know what a good solution to that other is than let the dog outside. If there's anyone else in that home, you let the dog out to run around, maybe just for a second, just while somebody's doing an interview on television, and maybe go, a different road when we come back. I also saw this reaction, which I thought was very interesting. This is Now, granted, the audio is not great for this, but this is Representative Ken Buck talking about what is right now a flawed understanding of how Republicans feel about giving $2,000 to every single American. A lot more Republicans are on board with that basic concept than we believe. The problem is the amount of spending that already exists, the amount of pork that's already in this stimulus package that has nothing to do with helping the economy and helping everyday Americans. It has a lot more to do with spending money in foreign places or spending money on museums and stuff, as Ken points out.
Nancy Pelosi gave the members of the House just a few hours to read 6,000 pages of legislation. She did that because she had stuffed this bill full of pork. We are funding, in a COVID relief bill, we are funding 2 new museums to women's history. We are funding social engineering programs in Pakistan. We are funding a panel to examine the succession of the Dalai Lama, all sorts.
That doesn't seem to make sense. When you tell me that you passed a stimulus relief package, a relief bill to help all of Americans cope with the fallout of COVID-19 and all the different quarantine issues and the different, I know there's going to be Paycheck Protection Program money added in, but when you have all these kind of challenges and then you also see for whatever reason on top of all those things, money for a succession of the Dalai Lama, you scratch your head. You wonder, like, okay, when some people complain about this kind of stuff and tell me that everything's not always on the up and up, maybe some people are more accurate about this than we give them credit for, and maybe there are reasons to think that American people need more relief, but we need to clean up the package that we're getting relief in the first place. I also saw this story in just another way in which things can be abused. You put a program out there, you hope for the best, and unfortunately that's not always the case. The Penguins, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the hockey team, which is valued at $650 million, they took out a COVID loan. They got $4.82 million in COVID relief. They were one of the many companies that partook in the Paycheck Protection Program. I believe the LA Lakers were in the news back when this first became a thing months ago for also partaking in some of the system. Some of these bigger companies defend themselves in doing this because the loan is designed to protect direct incentives for small businesses to keep their workers on the payroll. And I guess people have different understandings of whether or not their business is big or small. I think that the group immediately responded to the breaking news in this story by saying, with our arena being closed in March and without any event revenue, we requested that our landlord, the Sports and Exhibition Authority, SEA, consider a temporary deferral of our annual rent payment due in September. This request was denied. Accordingly, we borrowed $4.8 million under the CARES Act program in mid-August and applied those funds to the $6.1 million rent check we had to fill out to SEA in September, which was used by the public agency to make its required bond payment. The SEA indicated it is facing similar financial difficulties due to the closure of other convention centers and buildings, and we are pleased these funds are used to support and help the important agency during these challenging times. So they are defending themselves in that. I know that a lot of small businesses will react to this by saying, what now? Like, my loan got rejected, but you guys got those $4 million. And this is, to a lot of people, an abuse of a system that is designed for companies that are struggling a lot more than sports franchises, than giant big companies. But it also demonstrates part of the flaw in our system in general, that these sort of things can happen again and again, that we can pass a stimulus package and have a bunch of the funds go not to the American people at all and have a debate as to whether 600 or 2,000 makes more sense when we're giving millions of dollars to things that have nothing to do with our problems as they exist. In other news, a good news for a company, even though coronavirus has been such a horrible and stressful time for so many people, it didn't stop us from purchasing Corona beer. The beer company didn't see its profits fall as much as they thought they would, or its sales fall as much. The survey claimed that 38% of 733 Americans who were polled said they would not purchase beer. This is a previous report back in February, but sales seem to indicate the opposite, that much like every other brand, every other product in the alcohol world, they did fine in 2020. I think there was even rumors that they were going to change their name. And to be honest, maybe they still should. Maybe you should still go with a different name. All the other companies that change their names for very different reasons, Corona Beer is probably one that could consider doing it, and I wouldn't be totally against like some of the other stuff. But I guess that the reflection, according to the company, is that the product is still very much liked and has value, or just the fact that in this year we drank everything. I saw that this is a kind of a cool story. There are new training procedures in place to help dogs sniff out COVID-19. This is real. A COVID-19 vaccine is on the way, but until that time, disease-sniffing dogs may help. Canines have a 76% to 100% accuracy rate in detecting individuals with coronavirus simply by smelling their sweat. And this is actually a sample that's given to the dog. I don't know if it would be on the human body at the time of maybe you walking through an airport somewhere. But there's so many debates as to whether or not, say, a health passport should exist for those who've already had COVID-19. If dogs can sniff it, I mean, we have solutions in place, people. Dr. Dog is the name of the book. Our best friends are becoming our best medicine. This is according to one of the doctors that was a part of this article in the New York Post, describing how incredible it is. It is kind of amazing to think that a dog could smell a virus like COVID-19 that obviously has not existed for very long to an accuracy of 76 to 100%. We don't even have tests all the time that perform that well in making sure that they are right about the virus. Apparently, we didn't know that this whole time you could just hand a vial of sweat to a dog and they might be able to figure it out. Also, I saw that Bagel Bites has released a new product for 2020, and this made me scratch my head just a tad because I'm not sure that I like they're leaning into the world in which it currently exists. The iconic New York brand Bagel Bites has released their 2020 lackluster sad bagel product, which are purposeful, bagels that don't really look as nice as they're supposed to. The Bagel Bites 2020 edition is just flawed in every way that it can be flawed and not bringing you as much joy or as much perfection as you're used to for the food product. According to Grubhub's Year in Food data, Americans ordered pizza at a surprisingly insane rate. Not surprising to me because it's one of the easiest things to deliver, and that maybe Bagel Bites is leaning into that perfectly with their brand new 2020 inspired flawed bag. I don't know. Again, like everything else I just spoke about, if you lean in too heavily to this, I might just shy away. But then again, I didn't stop drinking Corona beer, so maybe not. We'll see. But that's a new product out there on the market just in time for the end of the year. If you want to get your memorial bag and maybe never eat it, just leave it in the back of the fridge like every Bagel Bite ever has been left in the back of a fridge for years to come. Just grab it as a collector's item. You never know. Someday maybe it'll be worth something. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. This story is nuts, and it's awesome and amazing, and I can't believe that it took me this long to even find out about it. I'm thrilled to share it here with you. You've probably heard about it before, but this is the first I've heard of it. It happened back in early December 9th in Tennessee. There was a family that had to deal with a fire, and they're both former firefighters, by the way. Nicole and her husband, Chris. They go to get their kids. They have 3 kids, Eli, Elijah, and then they have a baby. They go to the kids to try to get them, and they realize they can't get to the youngest. The baby, Nicole, is trapped somehow. And what happens next is ridiculous. 7-year-old Eli steps up and saves the day better than any Eli has ever saved anything. Yes, Eli Manning has done great things for the New York Giants at times, not anymore. But this Eli is the best of the Elis. I can't believe this.
That's when Eli, their 7-year-old son, went through the bedroom window to save his sister.
Well, Dad busted the window, and then I said, I can't do it about 2 times, and then I said, I got her, Dad.
The kid has no front teeth as he's talking to the news, and that it's just the most adorable, most ridiculous version. I'm going to put this up on my social media page at the Craig Collins Show. You've probably heard this story already. It's just been sent to me, and I just love it. 7 years old, and the firefighter dad breaks the window and can't figure out how to get in and get the little 22-month-old baby. And Eli's like, I got this. I'm 7. I've seen it, and obviously I'm not telling any other kid to try this. This is the kind of thing that is incredible as a news story, but probably horrifying to go through for the family to even deal with the fact that their son is now in there. But apparently no injuries. He came out. He had the baby in hand and say, like, this kid is a hero for life. For life. I think that for years to come now, no matter what happens, I know he's 7 right now, but when the kid gets of drinking age, free beer in any restaurant he goes into, which hopefully are all still open and successful, free whatever he wants. It's surreal. The story and the audio behind it, and just the nonchalant approach from that kid. He's going to do great things. 2020, not a total loss. Great things happening. That story is one I wanted to share with you. I also saw the biggest mysteries of the past year. And maybe I should wait till closer to the new year to actually do these stories. But why not? They're in front of me now. The monolith appearing was number 5 on a list of craziest, most perplexing stories. And monoliths, I should say, multiple. There have been quite a few, including just one the other day that was made of gingerbread. That's number 5 on this list. Number 4, the mysterious LA jetpack guy. One of the intriguing storylines of this past year. And I love Jetpack Guy. I know there's recently been video proof of him that I've put up on my social media page because it's the best. And I think that we should all get a free ride in a jetpack as part of the stimulus package at some point. But he's been amazing. And if you don't know anything about that story, well, now's the time. Number 3, the strange packet of seeds that was sent to hundreds of homes across the United States. This one was very odd. Over the summer, people across the U.S. began to receive seemingly inexplicable packages of seeds. Although the seeds were originally believed to have come from China, it soon became apparent that the address labels had been forged. Hundreds of Americans planted the mystery seed anyway, because that's us. That's our society in a nutshell. You get a seed in the mail, like, I don't know what this is. I might as well plant it to figure it out. You just do it. You're just like, okay, we'll get that. We'll see. The U.S. Department of Agriculture had absolutely nothing to say about it. Some even ate the products that came from the seeds, which I guess were some sort of plant, although it doesn't actually say what the food product was. But people just ate the seeds, I guess. Although most of the seeds have been identified so far as harmless herbs, flower plants, other different vegetables and things, which I guess there was some variety in the seeds too. Experts have warned that if you got some, you probably shouldn't just eat them. The U.S. Department of Agricultural, Animal, and Plant Health Inspection Service, the APHIS, which obviously we talk about all the time, has stated that seeds are probably part of a brushing scam whereby people receive unrequested items from the seller so that the seller can post fake reviews and talk about how great their product is on some sort of website. So maybe they just free product the heck out of this thing, and then the seller made up a bunch of reviews about how great they were. But I guess people should have just gone and written them, because if you're just eating the product that you got in the mail, I mean, it is a special subset of any society that goes that far with it. But hey, free food at a time when some people are struggling. And, obviously we don't have a lot of horror stories, so I guess it all worked out okay. An entire star system simply disappeared in a story you might not have heard of, but number 2 on the list of most perplexing things of 2020, not coronavirus related. Astronomers were scratching their heads after they saw an entire system just vanish overnight. Experts began to wonder whether or not it had collapsed into a black hole. So some people in other places in the vast solar system might have had a worse 2020 than us. But in the 75 million light years away from us. So it'll take a while for us to maybe fully grasp what happened there. And then number 1, a huge rise in UFO sightings throughout New York City. I was talking about the cigar-shaped ones that are also popping up in California. I don't know if this is, chicken and an egg situation, if being stuck inside makes more people see UFOs, or if more UFOs are out there because of whatever reason. But the number 1 story, I guess the uptick is significant. There have been sightings of up to 31% from 2019, up increases of 31% compared to 2019 in UFO sightings. There have been 46 spotted this year compared to just 35 last year. 2020 figures show that the world has seen an increase, not just New York, of 283% as far as incidents go. And this is compared, I guess, to 2018 as far as the amount of potential unexplained phenomenon. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, that would spin 2020 to be a whole new thing. If everything else we've dealt with, this was the year we also met aliens, I think that might be a pretty interesting way to cap it. I also saw this article, and I thought it was an interesting take just because I wonder if you're in the same boat, and I have a few more days to ask the question. So please go to our social media pages and tell us, will you be making New Year's resolutions this year? Is that something that going into the new year you will do, or do you not care? Is this the kind of year where you throw out those self-improvement kind of things that so many of us do? Because really just having the year not be 2020 anymore is good enough. There is a think piece from someone who said they will not be making any sort of resolution heading into 2021 for exactly that reason, that whatever went on in this past year, if you overindulged, if you got out of shape, if anything happened, you are forgiven. Let's just move to next year and put it all behind us. I love that advice. And this is the Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in.
This This is The Chad Benson Show.